गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. So we are in the third section of the first chapter of Kathopanishad, Tritiyavalli, and here through a parable of chariot, the ancient yoga of yoking of the individual with the Supreme, with the Absolute will be told. Rutam pibantau sakrutasya loke goham pravishhtau parame parardhe chhaya tapau brahma vido vadanti Panchagnayo ye cha trinachiketa. It says, the two who enjoy the fruits of their good works, being seated in the cavity of the heart, the seat of the Supreme, the knowers of the Brahman call them shadow and light, as also the performers of the five-fold fire, and those who have propitiated 3 times the Nachiketa fire. So what is this? Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, the mention of the chariot is there. Same way, I think in Bhagavad Gita is a later text. So sage Ved Vyasa must have taken the idea from here and planted it there, based on the circumstances at that time. But the idea seems to be much older. And this was not an idea of someone. This is a revealed scripture. And what is the story there? That there is a chariot, there are 5 horses, there is the reins, there is the charioteer, and there is the owner of the chariot. There in Bhagavad Gita we saw the owner of the chariot was Arjuna. The seat of the charioteer was the Krishna, the reins were the mind, horses were the senses. Exactly the same way here also, the owner of chariot is not the deluded Arjuna, like Arjuna. Here the owner of the chariot is the self itself. And the charioteer, the seat of the charioteer is the intellect, which is intelligent and discriminating. Or we can just say intellect. The quality, the stronger the intellect, the purer the intellect, the more discriminative the intellect, and keeping the mind, that is the reins, in control, to that extent the senses will remain in control. We'll look at it, and that whole idea is given here. And in that these two are there, the self and the shadow. Charioteer and the chariot is the body, and in this way the chariot along with its owner will only reach its destination when the charioteer is able to steer the chariot in the right manner with efficient control towards the goal, isn't it? If not, the chariot can break down, it can have an accident, or it can remain in one place not going anywhere. So that will be the idea that will be presented. But here it says, the two who enjoy the fruits of their good work, being seated in the cavity of the heart, the seat of the Supreme. So there are two, just like a shadow does not have its reality, it is dependent on the light, isn't it? Similarly, this ego, the individual ego, it is the shadow. Shadow of what? Shadow of the Supreme Self, the Supreme Light. And where is this shadow cast? It is cast, or it is expressing through the intellect and taking on the position of the ego center, for whom all the emotions, all the ideas, all the concepts, all the hungers, all the comforts, all that this body, that it is a mechanism, it is a conditioned personality, all that is for the ego and not for the self. But who is this ego? It is the shadow of the Supreme Self. It has got no independent existence. No shadow has any independent existence apart from the light. Similarly, this ego, the small I, when Master has said, there is always a to-let. To-let, there is empty. And this ego I, the small I, is looking, where can I express, where can I express, where can I express, and it goes to the various wombs. Where can I, where can I, where can I? And what is in the womb? All toilet only. The fetus is in the muck. It is not clean waters or anything, it's in the blood and all that placenta and everything. And it's looking everywhere, there's so many toilets. And it finds one and enters between the two and the let. And it becomes the toilet. And that's what we are. We are expressing through a toilet. Because this body, mind, intellect, if it is not thinking about the Supreme, what is it thinking about then? About the world is the worst thing that it can think of. So don't feel that the world that you are thinking about is divine. The divine world is a different one. We haven't developed the vision yet to see it. So, in this manner, the yoga, the Adhyatma yoga that is being told here, what is that? And where do these two express? They express in the cave of the heart, meaning the intelligence which is within the heart. And that's where they are expressing, both of them together. The same, when we did Mundaka Upanishad, there also it came. Do Suparna, the two birds living on a tree, remember that? So who are those two birds? The Avijnata and the Jiva. The unknown and the conditioned. So same, Gita also the same. Krishna is the ultimate reality and Arjuna is the conditioned reality. So this idea has been presented many, many times in different places. So here the journey that is to be traversed is by the small ego to the Supreme within us, and that Supreme within us is called the Paramatma. The entire world of change, of duality, of joys and sorrows, of likes and dislikes, of honors and dishonors, of comfort and discomfort is not for the Supreme I, is not for the reality, is not for the self. Once and for all, get this understanding. It is only for the small I. It is only for the Jivatma. It is only for the ego I. So don't think that when the divine thinks about the world, he thinks about the world the way you think about the world. Cannot. The divine, if at all from the God's point of view want to take, the God is the material and the efficient cause of the entire creation. That which is the material and the efficient cause of the entire creation, how can he think of anything in the creation as separate to Him. So our understanding of the world is that it is separate to us. God's understanding of the world is it is me only. Big difference. We are never shy to judge anyone or scold anyone or say bad word to anyone or praise anyone. Does God do anything like this? No. He just sits quiet. Always in silence. He's got nothing and no one to communicate. If He does, then He takes those special forms within the creation. Higher forms, which we call incarnations or saints and sages. So Ritam here, Rutam pibantau sakrutasya loke. Rutam means the divine law, or it means righteousness, it means the words of the Vedas are Rutam. These words that we are chanting, they are Rutam because they are part of Vedas. And what are these words? They are the righteous words, they are the law unto themselves, because man must, in the beginning of the lectures we spoke about it, that man has a manual on which he must base his life. Then he can bring the maximum out of himself. Then he is worthy of being called a man. And then when he is following that, eventually when he follows that, what happens? He becomes a God man. So what is that manual which will convert a man into a God man? Rather than make him go down and stoop low into becoming an animal man? It's the Vedas, the Rutam, the divine laws. Every word in the Veda is a law into itself. And here it is told that the fruits of action are enjoyed only by the individual soul and not the supreme soul. Understand, this law is what determines the fruit with the action. What action you do must, whatever action you do, that action must give a result, isn't it? So who determines what result to be given by what action? The divine law, the Rutam, the Vedas. How? And it is not that it is that, no, you have to believe this and you cannot, otherwise you will go to hell. There nowhere the word hell comes in the Vedas. Instead, you think logically, whatever we have studied till now, systematically that we have studied, as you think so you become. The teacher is the Vedas, the scriptures, the words of the scriptures are telling us, oh man, whatever you think, whenever you think about something consistently, that becomes your reality. So what's the superstition in this? What is unbelievable in this? Because that is our experience also. So all the scriptures are saying is that which is the most common sense, the general principles on which the life is based. We may not have discovered them. Why should we live a whole life of waiting for them to reveal them? No. You can read the scripture and find out that we should be good to others, that we should control our mind, that we should not allow the senses to roam around here and there, that we should not speak bad words to other people, that we should be truthful, that we should be non-violent, that we should practice discrimination and dispassion, that we must seek the ultimate within this lifetime. What's wrong if they are telling all this? Many people are already practicing, even though they have not read the Vedas. But if someone wants to know what to do, when and how to face that particular situation and how to find a solution, read. So here it says that every action is, when they say here, Rutam pibantau sakrutasya loke. Pibantau means both of them drink the fruit of the actions, meaning the joys that are gained by the actions, both of them drink. But here, don't understand both meaning the self also drinks and the ego self also drinks. No. Self, supreme selves cannot drink or not drink anything. It is as it is. The fruits are gained only by the individual self. The individual self, the ego self is the doer, the ego self is the enjoyer. Who is the supreme self? The supreme self is doing nothing. It's not doing anything, it's not enjoying anything. Then what it is doing? It's just being there. Where? Just there. Where? Where the ego is. In the cave of the heart. Both of them are together, but one is the shadow. So, in this manner, understand, and our Shankaracharya explains that this confusion about the dual word to be used, that is used here. He says, just like in a crowd, some people are carrying umbrella and some are not. But when we look from far away, we say, see, all of them are carrying umbrella. So, does it mean that all of them are carrying? No, only few are carrying. So, same way, here in that manner, the word has been used as Pibantau. And because this Jivatma and Paramatma, the individual ego and the infinite self, they are coexisting together, and therefore it has been spoken of in this manner. And where they are seated in the heart, where the intelligence expresses. And moreover, it says that the knowers of Brahman call them shadow and light. So I have already explained the shadow and light. The wise people call him that, like that. That the self, supreme self is the light, and the ego self, the Jivatma, is the shadow, playing all the tricks. And also the performer of the fivefold fire, and those who have propitiated 3 times the Nachiketa fire. Meaning, here the realization or the acceptance that there is an individual ego and that there is a supreme super soul or the supreme self is accepted by the wise man and can be realized by the wise man. But it is not the only by the wise man it can be realized. No, even the family people, those who are caught up in the family business, for they also know that there is an individual soul and a total soul or the infinite soul. So they can also, provided they prepare themselves and purify themselves. And also those who had done the Nachiketa fire that was given in one of the chapters, the Lord had named that fire by which you can attain heavens. So all those people who are on the way or have reached the heavens, the Hiranyagarbha, the total mind, they also know that there is an individual soul and a total soul. See? So God also knows there is individual soul and a total soul, the infinite soul, self.
That would be the Brahma Kosha?
Correct.
And is it that they are automatically absorbed at the end of the...
That is the end of the time, but that is not the point here.
No.
The point is that Brahma, the total mind, he also knows that there is a higher entity because of whom he exists. So, total mind is not the ultimate answer. So, so all these 3 type of people, those who are in this sansar, in this ephemeral world, and that ephemeral world is having 2 polarities. One is the individual side and the other is the total side. Both are in samsara only. Grihasthas, the family people, they all can have a vision of the truth, and they therefore, and they, because also they know that there is individual and the total. Yasetu rijana yetu sayet yasetu rijana yasetu rijananam aksharam brahma yat param abhayam titirshatam param nachiketam shakemahi. May we master that Nachiketa fire sacrifice, which is the bridge for those who perform sacrifices, as also that which is the highest immortal Brahman, fearless, and the other shore for those who wish to cross the ocean of samsara. So, what is being told here? That this Nachiketa fire, which was discussed before, acts as a bridge for the mortals and to gain the immortality. Which immortality? The Hiranyagarbha mortality, the total mind immortality. In the total mind, the death doesn't come like you and me are going to experience. That death will come only at the end of the time when the total gets absorbed. So that relative immortality is being talked about here, and that is the egocentric. The ego, through sincerity, faith, and devotion and dedication to the ultimate goal, eventually reaches through the sacrifice of the fires. That means invoking the fire. Either I don't know. I have not read the Veda. In that, are they talking about the outside fire or are they talking about the inner fire? I don't know. But everything can be looked at both ways. So when you have invoked the fire within and with the consistency of purpose being the totality or the heaven, keeping that in mind, such a person eventually drops his egocentric personality and reaches the divine-centric personality and abides there till the end of time. And when he abides there till the end of time, no wonder he is called immortal. We call all the gods immortal, but that is relative. And the second line of the mantra, Abhayam titirshatam param nachiketam shakemahi. Yes, the glorification that when a jnani, when an educated person, when a seeker, through his meditation, when he reaches that divine soul and creates his creates has, I don't know what is coming up. Achieves union with the divine soul. Okay, so that is being talked about Abhayam, and as a result of that, he becomes fearless and the other shore for those who wish to cross the ocean of samsara. And as a result of that union, he becomes fearless. And this way, the Lord has spoken. And now he continues in the third verse. These two verses in the beginning, they say that they were later on added to the Kathopanishad because they don't fall into the scheme of thought that is being presented. This point was already made before, but a little bit differently it is being presented here. So now the third verse. Atmanam rathinam vidhi, Atmanam rathinam vidhi, Shariram rathamevatu, Buddhim tu sarathim vidhi, Mana pragrahamevacha. Know that the Atma as the Lord of the chariot who sits within it, and body as the chariot, know the intellect as the charioteer, and the mind as verily the reins. And with this, I have already explained a little bit of it. But we also see there are about 10 mantras either fully taken or partially taken from this Upanishad and put as such into Bhagavad Gita. And so a lot of ideas, Maharshi Vedvyas, when he wrote Mahabharata, and in that, in the middle of Mahabharata, the Gita was composed, he has borrowed from here, from this Upanishad. So, in this analogy of the chariot, again repeating it, the self is the master of the chariot, the pure discriminative intellect is the charioteer, the reins are the mind, and the horses are the senses, and the chariot body itself is the body. And as long as we said before, as long as the intellect is strong in making decision, it is not very airy-fairy. I don't know, it will never reach destination. Charioteer, you know the way to the monastery? Maybe. Someone was supposed to come yesterday evening. He said, Swamiji, I want to come for 3 days. Okay. When I told you people, he hasn't arrived till now. So, what? Very quickly get distracted. They make a decision and get distracted. Not that ever. So, when the glory of being born as a human being is to prepare yourself thinking about this chariot. Understand that in the cave of your heart, your conscience, your inner voice is the voice of the Supreme. And the reflection of that is the ego self, which is the charioteer, and that ego self will be either that ego self can behave as an animal man or as a man or as a god man, isn't it? Depending upon how much discrimination it practices, exercises, and based on that discrimination, how much it is attached to the world, how much it has renounced the world, how much purification it has brought about in order to take the chariot, that is the body, in the particular direction. If it is an animal man, it will, that intellect which is thinking about only food, shelter and clothing, it will take the horses only to the restaurants and food and supermarkets. That intellect which is only a man, it will go after animal instincts but also try to improve itself and search that there is, what is that goal that they say we should achieve at the end of the life? Oh, let me look at it. And that man then, through control of the intellect, single pointedness of the intellect, control, and that comes about by control of mind, and you cannot have controlled intellect, a discriminating intellect, and horses going every direction. No. If the intellect is strong and with a sense of purpose, automatically the horses also come into control. And how do the horses come into control? By holding the reins. But to hold the reins, horses are powerful, not 1, 2, 5 of them. Actually 10. And when with one hand he has to hold and the other hand he has the, what do you call? Whip. He's got the whip. So with one hand he should be able to control, maneuver, direct, prod the senses in the direction that he wants to go. Horses should not decide where the chariot should go. The intellect must decide. So when a man is there, he decides that this chariot that I am riding in, each one of us is in that chariot. it must reach the destination of God. It must reach the destination of heavens. It must reach the destination of ultimate realization of the self within. So, if that is the goal, then move towards it. Don't get distracted by anything. So here the so here in this particular verse, the Lord of Death has explained to us the chariot, and now he continues that explanation. Indriyani hayanahuhu vishayansteshu gocharan atmendriyamano yuktam bhoktetyahurmanishinaha. The sense and the instincts, they say, are the horses, and their road are the sense objects. The wise call him the enjoyer when he is united with the body, the senses and the mind. So, naturally, if the horses are there and they are going to be treading some path, what is the path of the horses that they are going to walk on? They are going to tread the path of sense objects. And therefore each sense object has its own path. Eyes cannot see, what is happening? Eyes cannot hear, eyes cannot smell, eyes cannot feel, eyes cannot taste. Eyes can only see. That is the path laid out for the eyes. They can apprehend a form. No other faculty within us can do that. Ears can hear the sound. No other sense organ can do what ears can do, isn't it? The nose can smell. That is the sensory path that has been laid out in front of it. No other sense can smell like the nose. Cannot smell. Not like. Tongue can only taste. That's the sensory path. How? So imagine each one of them wants to see, another wants to hear, another. The chariot will collapse if all the horses go in their direction. You need an intelligent person, a strong person, in order to hold that. And all the horses are tethered to the reins anyway. And those, here it says, the sense and the instincts, they say, are the horses, and their roads are the sense objects. The wise call him the enjoyer when he is united with the body. So, when the consciousness is identified with the body, it becomes the enjoyer and the doer, as we said before. And united with the body, the senses and the mind. And when he gets identified with the senses, mind and the body, then the chariot, if the chariot is shaking a lot, he will complain. If the senses are not able to satisfy their musings, he will complain. When the mind is not able to feel and gain what it desires, he will complain. Or he will, through the senses and the mind, go into those sensory paths which are laid out in front of the senses, go and indulge. The one who indulges in order to become happy, he is called the animal or us. Ego. No, why should we say us? We are not the ego. We are here to transform the ego into the supreme. The process has begun. And it is seen that every human being, every child when is born with the senses. the seeing, if someone was to tell you that give up your senses, we have to, bhaiya, if we remove, if you have a choice, either we'll cut your ear off or we'll take your eye off. Which one will you allow the doctor to cut? Ear, right? Automatically it comes. We don't want to stop enjoying looking. If you were given a chance and the choice was given, listen, you have an infection in the ear and it is affecting your brain, and also your what do you call? So either you have to lose your brain or you have to lose an ear. Which one will you give up? Ear. You will not allow him to touch the brain, isn't it? So, seeing is sattvic compared to all of them, even though hearing is subtlest. And mind is subtler than the senses. So, we protect the eye compared to other senses. We protect the mind. If we have to give up the senses, we'll protect the mind. We'll protect our ideas and our ideals when it comes to the emotions of the mind, and will protect ourselves when it comes to anything else. So here we see that, and another example is that a child who is born with one sense, suppose he is born blind, that child can, the ability gets into other senses and he is able to function, isn't it? If one sense is missing, you can still function. If two senses are missing, suppose hearing and seeing are missing, still they can function, but can't enjoy the world. Already a liability. But not many cases are there, but some rare cases are there where seeing, hearing and smelling also is gone. I know one person, he had an accident and he fell on his head, he had a helmet in India and he fell down. Came back from the doctor, sense of smell gone. You give him spice, he can't smell anything. Let it be a rose, let it be dirt, let it be nice. But we see, very rare are the people who are not having three senses to experience the world. Very rare. They are almost like such people, if they are there, they are like vegetables living at home. Nothing can be done about it, isn't it? So, we need five senses in order to enjoy the world. By who needs the senses to enjoy the world? The ego. He needs the mind to enjoy the world, because it is the mind which is going through the senses to the sense objects to devour them and enjoy them. And that is what is being told here, that the senses and the instincts are the horses and their roads are the sense objects. The wise call him the enjoyer. Who? That owner, when he identifies, does owner ever identify? No, his shadow identifies. With whom? With the mind and the senses and the sense objects. And then he becomes the enjoyer of the world. And same idea I explained yesterday, I think, that as we said just now, that if two or three senses are non-functional, life becomes meaningless, isn't it? Does that ever happen to you when senses become meaningless? Have you experienced when your senses are not functioning anymore?
When we wake up sometimes.
We
When you wake up or when you are asleep?
When you're asleep, you don't know anything.
When you sleep, every night when we go to sleep, slowly, each one of the senses is shutting down. Time out, time out, time out, time out, and sometimes all the senses have stopped, but the mind is still going. And eventually, and that mind going on in its imaginations creates a dream world. Eventually that also stops. So the sixth sense, the mind, that has also gone, and you end up in deep sleep. You end up in deep sleep. And this is what is told here, that just as we are not aware of the outer world in deep sleep, none of our sense organs are functioning in the deep sleep, therefore we are not aware, and same thing will be the case when we are on the seat of meditation, consciously bringing this about. Now there, involuntarily, the senses were withdrawing from their sense stimuli, correct? Because the sleep pull was there. But when you keep thinking, this is, I think I am repeating again, I repeated it in the first class or yesterday. But when we are on the seat of meditation and our focus is single pointed on the Supreme Being within us, in the cavity of the heart, that's where our attention is, again and again, without a break, the pull will come, and automatically the more intensity, the love and dedicated and sincerity you think about that self within the cavity of your heart, and you don't need to use words also for that. It was told, chant Om and think about, and put your attention, find out where it is. When we do, see, this is so, I sometimes thrilled. When we do meditation, I say, put your attention from where is the Om arising and where it is the Om merging back, isn't it? That is the cave of the heart. That point where the merging takes place and that point where the appearing and disappearing takes place. What is that space? What is that material? What is that source from which Om is arising and Om is merging back into? That point is the cave of the heart. See? So when you are thinking about it to the exclusion of everything else, automatically your senses will get withdrawn. Your mind will get withdrawn. But now I want to know the self. Where is the mind? What is the source of the Om? And but why Om? Why cannot it be Ram? Why cannot it be Jesus? Gone. It will not happen. Why? You have allowed doubt to appear in your mind. You have allowed variety to appear in your mind. And mind just wants a little bit variety. Jesus, why not Jesus? I am Christian. And Jesus. And suddenly the whole story of Jesus passes through your mind and meditation is over. You did not sit there to see the story of Jesus. You can watch that on the TV. You sat there to find the source of Om, and you ended up watching the movie of Jesus. This is how we shortchange ourselves everywhere. So, the picture, the Upanishad says that the sense, I have already explained this. The wise in the stanza mean the sages and the saints and sages who have realized in their lives the total perfection. And how they have realized the total perfection? The Supreme Self within the cave of their heart, by the control of their horses, which is the senses, and the control of their mind, which is the reins. And they declare that the true identity, true entity in us, which is free of joys and sorrows, is the Atman, the Supreme Self, because that's a roar of their realization. It is not just they are repeating it from the books, that is their realization. And many of them have never read the books. Shirdi Sai Baba never read any book. Satya Sai Baba never read any book. He studied only till 8th or 9th, isn't it? But the entire knowledge of all the scriptures in all the religions is at his fingertips. All the languages are at his fingertips. But all this does not qualify him. Important thing is, he is free of joy and sorrow. Why? Because he has recognized who he essentially is, and therefore he can make a statement that I am God and you are God, I know it, you don't. This statement cannot come from any person's mouth. No, we have heard it, we have said it, but what impact did it make? When he makes, look how many people are following him, are inspired by him. That one line of his is able to bring about a lasting change in the mind of a person. So, they say, so who is, then naturally if the Atman is the one who is not experiencing the joys and sorrows, then who is the one who is experiencing the joys and sorrows? It is the conditioned self which is expressing from within through the intellect at the seat of the charioteer. That is the conditioned self. Therefore, the ego is only a reflection, only a shadow of the supreme intelligence within us. And that leads us to the 5th verse. Now the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th verses are the purpose. What is the reason why this analogy of the chariot is given to us? So that purpose will be indicated in the next 4 verses. यस्त्व विज्ञानवान् भवति अयुक्तेन मनसा सदा तस्येन्द्रियाण्यवश्यानि दृष्टाश्वा इव सारथेः. It says, one who is always of unrestrained mind and devoid of right understanding, his sense organs become uncontrollable like the vicious horses of a charioteer. I have already explained this. In an inefficient, yo-yoing charioteer who is not sure of what his direction is, he will not be able to keep the reins in control, and when the reins are not tight, the horses will run amok to various destinations and eventually bring about a downfall for that person who is the owner of the chariot. So if the intellect is not determined, it is not decisive about the goal, that will make our journey that we have decided for ourselves much longer, isn't it? So what is the first thing that we must practice in our life? Never remain in a I don't know mode. Never remain in a I don't know mode. I don't know mode should be only about the truth. Yes, you don't know the truth and it cannot be known. Agree? It is not a subject or matter for the intellect to think. But as far till the total mind, intellect knows. Until then it must exercise discrimination. And what is the discrimination? It must not follow the path of pleasant, it must follow the path of good. And what is the good? Automatically, if you want to reach the heavens, you have to do the right things, you have to control your mind, you have to control your senses, and eventually become more and more and more and reach the total mind. And a person who does not do this become uncontrollable like such a person gets lost in the sensory what do you call it? Objects, sensuous life that the world or the stimuli is present to this person, and as a result gives up the pursuit for the life of perfection and starts living like a miserable entity in the world, continuously complaining, sometimes becoming happy, but majority of the time only complaining. So he has been asked that keep your mind steady, keep your discriminating intellect sharp, only then there is a possibility of further growth for you, O man. Yastu vijnanavan bhavati. Here another one, it is told that Yastu vijnanavan bhavati yuktena manasa sada tasyendriyani vashyani sadashva iva sarathehe. But he who has the right understanding and has a mind always controlled, his senses are always controllable as the good horses of the charioteer. For such a sadhaka, such a seeker who has controlled the impulses of the mind, the greatness of human being is only one. Given a free rein, we use this word, given a free rein, the mind will take you to unimaginable imaginations, usually in the sensuary world. Window shopping, brothels, pubs, and whatnot. Wanting to visit other countries. It's all sensual itch, sensory itch from inside. So here it is told that given a free rein, mind will take you in the direction. Control the reins of the mind. Because mind survives on variety. Mind loves variety. Mind loves something beautiful. Mind loves to taste different things. Mind loves to look at different things. Mind loves to smell different perfumes and fragrances. Mind loves to feel nice things. Mind loves to taste different things. The more the better. So here it is told that such a seeker who has controlled his mind with right understanding, he is called Vijnanavan. Vijnanavan means he who has yoked his mind to the discriminative intellect. The one who has yoked his mind to the discriminative intellect, such a person is called Vijnanavan. Mind, again I will repeat, intellect is the decision-making faculty, mind is the emotional faculty and that faculty which wants to enjoy different things. And the different things are whatever comes in through the five senses. Intellect, what does it? It decides what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is worthy and what is unworthy, what is the path of good and what is the path of the pleasant. It decides. Mind cannot decide. It is too fickle. So when we have tethered that fickle mind, meaning it is in the hands of the purified or decisive intellect, then it starts behaving itself. And a person who has been able to do that, he is called Vijnanavan, he is called educated, he is called the one who is a person of standing He is respected in the society. So, what we should be doing in our life, every moment, forget about truth. Yes, don't forget about truth. Keep that in mind, but every opportunity that you get, you reflect, you assess, you see. I have given you this exercise many times. Introspect, detect, negate and be happy. Grow and be happy. So every day before you go to sleep, you must introspect your day and detect where you have been less than what you have decided yourself to be. So that is the time you will remember again, what do I want to be? Do I want to be an individual self or the Supreme Self? If I am the Supreme Self, where did I fall short today in my interactions? What were the impediments that were created, which will leave some unwanted impressions in the mind? Where did I behave unworthy of a person who is seeking to be the Supreme, which is equal to loving the whole world as it is? So you find out and then replace those negativities that you expressed with a positive affirmation and go to sleep. Every day. Eventually, when that habit is created after 1 or 2 months, now 1 month it will not be possible, 2 months, 3 months, then all the time, 24 hours a day, while you are doing, you will be alert. Am I going in the right direction? Am I moving towards the self or am I moving towards the pleasant? Am I becoming less than what I was yesterday? Am I becoming a problem to myself? And this joy of perfecting yourself every moment, you are in competition with your own performance every day. Then you don't need competition from outside. Such a person is withdrawn. He is totally introverted. He is thinking about his growth to the Supreme. And he is aware where I am falling short, where I am getting caught up, where I am unnecessarily wasting time, where I am unnecessarily involved. And he starts dropping one by one. Why? Because he wants to utilize all that energy which is leaking away in unwanted pursuits to be directed towards the Supreme. Yasto vijnanavan bhavati amanaskah sada shuchihi nasatat padamapnoti sansaram chadhigacchati. And he who is devoid of proper understanding, thoughtless and always impure, never attains that goal and gets into the round of births and deaths. And he who is devoid of proper understanding, the one who does not want to exercise decision making, and he may make decisions, but he is always making decisions about which desire to satisfy in the world, which food to eat, what menu to organize, what food, what things to buy, and how to fill up my house with something or the other. Such a person, devoid of proper understanding. Proper understanding means when the intellect is thinking about the world and not about the Supreme Self. That is improper understanding. Thoughtless. Why? He has not even spent a little bit of time, an iota of his life, thinking about the Supreme. Who is that reality which is functioning through me? Not even once. And always impure. Impure does not take bath, does not brush his teeth, does not wash his dishes, eats in the dirty plates and dirty glasses, drinks from dirty glasses, looks at dirty things, thinks dirty thoughts, wears dirty clothes. It starts from outside. That sense of purity from outside slowly trickles within. Is it that dirty man cannot realize? Dirty man can also realize. But that dirty man whom you have seen in stories, who is living in the garbage dump, who is living, that Gajanan Maharaj who is drinking from the dirty waters which is coming from the toilets and the kitchen into the outside drain, and from there he is drinking and eating the food that is the leftover food that is thrown by the people from the house along with the dogs. He is eating. He is eating something from the leftovers, and that same food he is taking and putting into the mouth of the dog. When you look at that picture and you say, oh, why he is okay and why I am not okay, you are not that great master. That master, when he is drinking the water, when that devotee asks, fee to you, shame to you that you are drinking, you are a young man and you are drinking from dirty water and leftover food. Don't you have any dignity? Don't you have any self-respect? And that master looked up. He says, I am drinking Ganga water, come look. He took that dirty water from the drain in his bowl or whatever he had, and it was crystal clear. Now, he has the vision of divinity everywhere, so he can behave that way. So don't fool yourself that you have become divine and start behaving like a fool. We must practice shaucha. We must practice cleanliness. If we want a pure mind, we must have pure habits in life. We must have clean habits in life. I know if I don't take shower, if I don't make my hair, if I don't iron my clothes, you people will not say anything. Maybe once you might say, what happened to you? Today you didn't iron the clothes, because you are so used to seeing everything ironed out and hair always right and maybe once you will ask, but after 2-3 times you will not ask. And I can get away with it. You don't know whether I brushed my teeth or not. You don't know whether I went to toilet or not. You don't know how my room is, whether my room is clean or not. We can make believe that we are clean. But when we practice this habit of cleanliness, it will help us to, that habit, when it seeps into our mind, becomes a mainstay of the mind. Wow! It will help us to think about the Supreme. An impure mind cannot think about the Supreme goal. Only a pure mind can. To bring about the pure mind, pure intention, you have to have a pure mind. To have a pure mind, you have to have purified senses. To have purified senses, you have to have pure interaction with the world around. Correct? And that is how. And what was the pure interaction with the world? Do not disturb the world, do not get disturbed by the world. See, everything connects. You cannot make shortcuts. So unless and until such a person does not train himself to live his day-to-day life in a proper manner, in an ethical manner, in a moral manner, there is no hope for such a person, because if he lives a life of trickery, if he lives a life of unethically, there will be many loose ends within his mind for which he is guilty, or he is anxious, or he is fearful, and such a person cannot, he is continuously only thinking about that. Where is the time to think about the Supreme goal? So we must live a life of self-control. Every day we must assess and see that have we become better in controlling our senses and our mind, or have we slipped? We must every day check, have we become more truthful than yesterday, or was there any place where we told lies inadvertently? Check correct, and move forward. Because a person who has not yoked his mind to the convictions of the intellect, such a person is called avijnanavan. So Vijnanavan was he who has yoked his mind to the convictions of the intellect. And as a result, he reaches the goal, he has to. There is no choice. It will happen. But that person who has conviction in the intellect that I want to know the truth, but is not able to think about the truth or pursue that path, it's only because the mind has not been yoked to the convictions of the intellect. And mind will be yoked to the convictions of the intellect, meaning the senses and will be withdrawn from the sense paths, sensory paths. They will be withdrawn, mind will be withdrawn and directed by the conviction that you have set, the goal that you have set in your intellect, what you want to be in this life. Isn't it? So when you want to be a father, good father, then you do whatever it takes. Your senses tell you, your intellect has decided that I have to go and take care of my son. And come what may, you will go and take care and now you are at peace. But if you had not gone, would you be enjoying this lecture? You'll be just thinking, oh man, I should have gone yesterday. Why did I not go? What will be happening? I must call him, but the phone line is not working, blah, blah, blah. And here such a hi-fi idea is being presented, and here you are thinking, oh, what, I should have gone yesterday. Isn't it? If we have ever achieved anything in our life, whenever success has come to us in our life, those are the moments where the mind was yoked to the conviction of the intellect. Rediscover the conviction after having studied the Upanishad that the real conviction is the path of the Absolute. So, otherwise, so here the point that is they are making is that he who is devoid of proper convictions, proper understanding, is thoughtless, is always impure, never attains that goal of realization, the goal of the conscious witnessing in this lifetime, and gets into the rounds of births and deaths again and again. A person who's living a sensual life, uncontrolled by the unyoked from the convictions of the intellect, such a person keeps going, taking birth after birth after birth after birth, and opportunity is being given to that person in every birth, because the conviction is there that I want to know the Supreme, but the realization is not taking place. And that the only reason, the only obstacle between the conviction and its realization is the mind. Only that, nothing else. Remove the mind, merge the mind back into its source, or yoke the mind to the convictions of the intellect. How dare it behaves of its own? How dare it makes me sleep more than beyond 4 o'clock? If the lecture is at 4 o'clock, I must be here early to take bath, etc. How dare it lures me to eat extra? Dare not. Punish it if it requires. Initially, sometimes it requires. I used to, when I remember in early 90s, I used to sit 4 times a day. I used to sit in meditation and do my yoga and pranayam and everything. And if during pranayam, if I fall asleep, this mind had it. I will go and stand under a cold shower, even in winters, and I didn't care. You want sleep? Sleep now. and a quick shower, come back, sit down again. If it sleeps again, again under the shower. If it wants to eat more, I will feed him so much that he will puke afterwards. But those practices were in the beginning. Now I don't do that. That was required at that time because it was taking me, it needed to know who's the boss. It's not me, it's the intellect which was deciding to make, no, you are not going your way. You are going to do what I am telling you. You have to sit and meditate. You have to sit and enjoy the meditation. You have to sit and enjoy taking the name of the Lord. How dare you not? And afterwards, when it started listening, then still it would go here, there. Now it was like a different way, it didn't require that many hard, drastic measures to control. So, see, those people who are misappropriating money, are lusty for the world, are doing black market, etc., are corrupt, and then every evening they come, light a lamp in their house, or on the way go to the church and sit there for half an hour and do Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Nothing is going to happen. They are deluding themselves. So is there any hope? Yes, there is hope. Just control your mind and make it follow the intellectual convictions. And in this manner, do not live a life to only eat. Life must be lived to renounce and renounce. Very important. Otherwise, morning, what's for breakfast? Afternoon, what's for lunch? Evening, what's for dinner? In Western life, it is not that much. You go to Indian, this gentleman came to live with us, someone's father. He will make his wife get up in the morning, prepare hot breakfast. He will not do it. In the afternoon, he will make her knead the dough, make a vegetable, make some fresh rice and eat. She has cooked the rice, she has cooked the dough. Sometimes we also eat. But if the dough is left over from yesterday, why can't you finish that? If it is left over from the afternoon, why can't you finish it in the evening? No, you have to make fresh. No compromise. Only thinking about food. Acha, 9 o'clock now, what are we? So what are you, in the evening he is eating food. What have you decided for tomorrow's breakfast? Let her rest, yaar. Give her a break. Just because she is your wife doesn't mean that you are going to slave her to give you every food that you want or whatever you wish. So life is not about just eating, life is about renouncing. And when renunciation is practiced, automatically the mind is getting yoked to the discriminative intellect. It helps, renunciation helps. The less things you are attached to, the less things you are desirous of, the less things you are running after, automatically the mind is free of them. And that allows, a free mind is naturally yoked to the intellect, and that intellect is more convinced about its convictions. The more it is convinced, the more dispassion will be practiced, renunciation will be practiced, and that becomes a self-feeding cycle. So the script, the Kathopanishad is saying here that the men of no self-control not only fail to reach the supreme self, the supreme state of their being, but also fall back into the life of birth and death again and again, and find it very difficult to get out of it. Yastu vijnanavan bhavati samanaska sada shuchihi satu tat padamapnoti yasmad bhuyo na jayate. But he who is intelligent, ever pure, and with the mind controlled, verily reaches that goal from whence none is born again. Look at this next time. So now totally the other vision. So is there any no hope? No. That was about a person with an uncontrolled mind. But what happens to a person with a controlled mind? What is the result that he gets in life? That is being talked about in the next verse. This we'll see in our next class at 6:30. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om. See how systematically our mind is being prepared, huh? Step by step, nothing is being left to chance. Every angle is being covered.